right, well today I really prayed and I felt like the Lord said to talk about communication, just basic communication. And, you know, with in mind that, you know, we all have people. I think part of the idea behind why we wanted to do this workshop is to know how to help other people. And so that's really what he spoke to my heart, is that, you know, sometimes we get into situations and it's intense or emotional, and you know, you can think, I don't know what to say or do. And so, you know, some of this today is to kind of just lay a foundation for all of that. And you know, we'll talk about some specific examples at the end, just so, you know, we can maybe even practice a little bit, and you know, so you know what it looks like to respond to a person in need, and maybe even in crisis. So anyway. Okay, so I wanted to start with a few little fun statements. It was recently my birthday, and I always get a card from a friend that like is full of jokes and fun stuff to, you know, for laughing. And so anyway, some of these just stood out as very funny, so I thought I would just read a couple of them. So don't be worried about your smartphone or TV spying on you. Your vacuum cleaner has been collecting dirt on you for years.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah. Kids today don't know how easy they have it. When I was young, I had to walk 9 feet through the shag carpet to change the TV channel. You know, once you get used to a remote, you don't remember how bothersome it was to have to get up and change the dial every time, but anyway.
I do for the commercials, it gets so loud, I'm like flushing the channels.
Right, yeah. Turn that thing off. Yeah. Okay. A thief broke into my house last night. He started searching for money, so I got up and searched with him. I thought that was pretty funny.
We definitely need that training.
Yeah. Provision train, Lord, please. Okay, just 2 more. Life is like a helicopter. I don't know how to operate a helicopter. So, yeah. All right, and the last one. Never sing in the shower. Singing leads to dancing. Dancing leads to slipping. And slipping leads to paramedics seeing you naked. So remember, don't sing.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, that was fun. So anyway.
Was that Debbie Porter?
Yes.
She is a character.
Yeah,
She's
definitely. Anyway, okay, great. All right, well, let's just, I do have a little PowerPoint here. Communication to promote healing, and let's see. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is 6 core strengths, and this is from a psychologist named Dr. Bruce Perry. Anyway, he really was on the forefront of researching and studying relationships, and you know, especially attachment styles, how people connect to each other. And so these are 6 core strengths of any relationship. So first of all, you have an attachment, hopefully, you know, in the relationship. That's usually a basic, you know, and the attachment is especially with, you know, you have friends that are like acquaintances. This is not talking about that. This is more like your very close relationships, your family, parents, children, maybe other family members that you're close to. And then usually people have like an inner circle of friends that are close. And so you have some kind of attachment and connection to those people. Or you should have, I guess, is a strength. Also, self-regulation, being able to, you know, kind of regulate your emotions so they don't get, you know, too far out there. In relationships, too intense, like where you're just irrationally angry at somebody, or irrationally scared that you're going to lose the person. But just to have some ability to self-regulate and, you know, process your emotions and that keeps the relationship kind of moving forward and healthy. Affiliation, which is, those are really feelings of connection. The attachment is what you actually do as far as feeling connected, but the affiliation is, you have that desire to be with this person. You want to seek them out, spend time with them. And there's actually, oxytocin is a hormone in your brain that triggers affiliation. And so there can be some brain chemistry involved in that too. So attunement, so that, with your closer relationships, you feel, the person, so you kind of can, how they're feeling usually, or, maybe not always what they're thinking, but you just have a general sense, are they okay today? You can sense when they're maybe having an off day, or, and that's a part of relationships, that it's a give and take, and so, everybody has some rough times or bad days, and so then, that's part of, you give when the person needs, and then the person gives to you when you need, and so that's, but being in tune with that person. Tolerance, so that, everybody's got little idiosyncrasies, and so, there's inevitably going to be some things about your friendships and family that drive you nuts, but you just learn to tolerate that, because that's just how they are. That's, they're not personal against me, or, I accept them for who they are, and so, they like to eat Cheerios at midnight, and I don't understand that, and they're a little noisy, but, okay, I can tolerate that, because I'm attached to them, I love them, I want to be around them, and so, so you have tolerance for certain things, of course not, things that would be unhealthy emotionally, but yeah, just those little idiosyncrasies. And then also there's a mutual respect. So you respect each other, needs, boundaries, stuff like that. So those are all kind of 6 core strengths and foundations to relationships. Okay, so we have adverse events that happen to us in life. So this will impact us personally. This is more about your capacity, or your friend or your family's capacity to have a relationship. So the adverse events, they can be occasional events, and usually that doesn't impact as much, something, let's say somebody has a car accident, it's a little bit traumatic, but you work through it and you move along in life, and it doesn't really change how you interact with people or who you are. But now when you have multiple ongoing events, like just several things in a row that maybe are very traumatic, that can impact how people connect and relate to others. They may then, because of the events, be struggling with trauma or depression or anxiety. They're just different things that they could be struggling with that can impact their ability to actually have a healthy relationship. So that's one thing to keep in mind with the people you are connected to. So, the second point talks about that. I did put some scriptures that I wanted to read real quickly, because I feel like these are, you need some biblical foundation for dealing with things like trauma, depression, anger, anxiety, things like that. So I just wanted to read these real quick. Okay, so let me see. For anger, Ephesians 4:26 and 27 says, this is the English Standard Version, be angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger, and give no opportunity to the devil. so this is, I feel like the Lord is saying, it's okay to be angry, but don't hold on to it for more than a day, because if you go into overnight, then really the second verse, you're giving the devil opportunity to whisper those things. That person really didn't blah, 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 to set those negative things. And then, some of them you might say, oh, well, that's not true. But some of them you might create doubt in your mind, though. Oh, yeah, well, maybe they were like that. And so that's where the enemy likes to get in and really turn things around in a bad way. I want to read this, too, in the Passion Translation, because I thought this was a really good version. So in the Passion Translation, it says, but don't let the passion of your emotions lead you to sin. Don't let anger control you or be fuel for revenge, not even for a day. Don't give the slanderous accuser, the devil, an opportunity to manipulate you. So that's a little more detailed about the process of what can happen, I think, with the enemy. If you partner and you hold on to that anger and it becomes bitterness. So, okay. So the next verse then is about anxiety, Philippians 4, 6 and 7. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And then the second verse tells you what will happen if you do this. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. So I've always thought that was an amazing verse, that the actual presence of his peace will help guard your mind from those negative things from the enemy. If you're at peace with God and focused on him, those words should just fall off. And then also the same with your heart, that, no maybe emotions or anger or bitterness will, if you have the peace of God in your heart, it's a protection, is what the word says, from falling into the negative stuff. So, okay, and then let me see. I was going to read that one in the Passion too. Let's see. I thought I had it marked. Hold on. Here we go. Here it is. Okay. So the Passion Translation says, don't be pulled in different directions or worried about a thing. Be saturated in prayer throughout each day, offering your faith-filled requests before God with overflowing gratitude. Tell him every detail of your life. Then God's wonderful peace that transcends human understanding will guard your heart and mind through Christ Jesus. So that's, again, a little more detail to, what the first verse that we read, the first translation. So, okay. And then for depression, there's actually a lot of verses you could kind of pick that could speak to depression. But one of the websites I went on to, people, I guess, kind of not really voted, but they said which verse helped them the most. They had about 100 scriptures, and people kind of checked whatever the verses that helped them the most. So the one that was the most common was Psalms 34, 17 and 18. When the righteous cry for help, the Lord hears and delivers them out of all of their troubles. The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit. And I guess I can understand that, because, if you're struggling with some depression, you could feel really brokenhearted and just really crushed in your spirit. So anyway, so those are some biblical foundations, really, to have in mind. And they're good scriptures to have to help other people, if they would be receptive to that. We may be helping some people that are not believers, possibly, but it's just a good, to maybe have some of those references if you're trying to help others. Okay, so so the adverse events, and going back to our PowerPoint here, it can create incorrect thinking. people then start to believe things about the world that are probably not true. Like they may start to have some thoughts, well, I'm never going to succeed in this area of my life, or, it could be a lot of different things. That's just one example. But they start to believe things that, the enemy can whisper to them to discourage them. And so those incorrect thinking things, can really pull them down. And, a lot of times when people talk and say those, and this is part of what I do actually in counseling, you listen to what they're saying. And when you hear those things that are not true, usually they're never, always, I can't do this or that. A lot of times you'll hear those kind of words, but that just becomes very clear that, well, that's not true. That's not what God says about it, and so, the godly perspective is really what you need. So, social cues can be misinterpreted, when people go through adverse events. Maybe they've been hurt by, a certain family member, or something more foundational that might be easier to understand is that, let's say a child growing up really never had the love and affirmation of a father, and so then that leads them to believe that, I need to maybe have, either an intimate relationship with a male, or to even maybe male friendships that, I've got to do all of this and be really perfect, and then maybe this friend will like me. So some of those kind of thinking patterns can develop. So misinterpreting social cues, So then if they had that foundation, then let's say the friend, decided not to come over, or they were going to do something and then canceled, and so then the person would just be devastated. They don't love me anymore. Might start questioning, do they even want to be my friend anymore? Those kind of things. So that can be a misinterpretation of social cues. So like now specifically with trauma, people tend to overreact to things that would trigger their feelings of trauma. And if you didn't know them well enough, you may not know that. They may overreact to things, get very upset by something that's just a very minor little, what we would think is a minor issue. And so that's just, and we're looking at these things because these are underlying motivations. If you're trying to help somebody, you don't want to just respond on the surface to what they're saying. If you know them well enough, you can have the thought of, okay, they're reacting this way because of this issue in their life. So that can give some clarity. It can really help you to know how to respond even. They may need to hear, so suppose they had that issue with not having a father, and you saw that going on with this friend in theirs, and you could say, I know we've talked before about, that you it's important for you to have this friend because it kind of meets your father need or something, and it seems like you're overreacting, and so you can bring that into, if they would be open to hearing that, that's an example. Okay, and then again, fear changes the way we think. More extreme fear, really with trauma, can just, it really triggers those stress hormones. I know we've talked about this before, I think, in some of the other stuff that classes I've done about, how fear and anxiety can make you have short-term memory loss and confused thinking, and so some of that can happen. And again, you would just have to know the person if they're getting into this kind of place where they seem like they're not talking logically, or it doesn't make sense what they're saying. And so, you know, you just would have to know the person again. So, all right. Okay, so how communication develops, and we're going to go back to childhood for just a minute, because, you know, the Lord has set us up to really know how to relate to people through the family system, and so that's very important. It's how we first attach to other people, and you know, just how we learn to navigate life through relationships in our family. So, you know, a lot of times in counseling, you know, I talk to folks about, you know, well, what did happen in your family? I thought I clicked something. So, you know, what were your relationships like with your parents? And so then, you know, to help them to have insight, like, I know not too long ago, I was having a session with a girl who is in college, and you know, she had done very well in therapy, and we were just having a last couple of sessions to wrap up. And so we just talked about relationships in general. And she said, you know, I realized that my dad tends to be reactive. And so what my mom has done, I've seen my mom do all my life, is that if she wants to communicate something to him, she does it very indirectly because she's afraid he'll blow up. And so what the mother would do then is tell her, oh, well, your dad forgot to get this at the store. And so then the daughter my client would then kind of communicate, well, Dad, you know, I think we need this at the store. And so the girl said, I realize it's just been this roundabout communication system that sadly she was a part of. She was in the middle of that to communicate to the dad what the mother needed. And so she herself realized that she was developing a very passive communication style, so that she wouldn't really say what she needed in friendships. You know, she would let things go instead of saying things, or let the other person decide and not really speak up and say what she wanted. And so she realized, as we talked about it, how that was just very dysfunctional. And by the last session, she said, you know, I'm just determined. I'm not going to continue in this, and I'm going to be very careful with my own relationships, that, you know, I value direct communication, and we're not going to go around this wheel. And so I really applauded her for making that decision. So that was awesome. All of that to say, our communication develops within our family. Of course, safety is number one. If you live in a family where you don't feel safe, you know, you're really probably not going to be able to communicate in a healthy way. You know, there might be a lot of fear, anxiety, or just a total withdrawal and not communicating at all. So, this fancy word, intersubjectivity, it just means the interrelationship between you as a child and your parents. And so the parent, because the parent is the parent, you know, is the adult, the parent's experience really first defines the subjective experience of the child. So I think I talked before one time about how children that have mothers that are very depressed tend to be depressed children. And it's because that's their reality. My mom's, you know, sad and depressed. They don't really think that, but they see the emotion and they feel discouraged and hopeless. You know, if my mom is this way, what hope do I have? You know, would be the feeling that they would have. So then they, you know, would probably be depressed at some level, maybe not as much as the mom. So then parents and children also have that attunement. And so children are they're designed by God to be in tune with their parent, because that's how they learn. And so, you know, so they, again, share feelings and affect about things, like what I just said about the depression. So there's a shared attention. There's kind of a joint awareness about things that are going on in the family, in the household. shared intentions, hopefully cooperation, and then of course parents, that's part of the parent's job, is in a healthy way teach the child to engage in the family, and you're a part of our system, and what role the child then has in the family. So okay, so and then of course the big summary of all of this is all of this carries over to future relationships. And so it's just, again, something to keep in mind. Your upbringing is really more important, I think, than sometimes people realize, because it sets the foundation. So something to be aware. We can be aware of it for our own selves, but also for our friends and the people that we're trying to help. If we know what they went through, or sometimes that's part of having friends, and you ask about those kind of things so you can understand, and that's, you have that friendship intimacy that, you know the person. That's what relationships are all about, is that you know the person. Okay? Okay, so some key concepts. The connection and the attachment is what really creates the cooperation. And so, children at a young age, of course, within 6 to 9 months, children have stranger danger. And so they're really, they want their parent, and if somebody strange comes in, they're like, And of course, I've just experienced that with my granddaughter. She's a little over a year old now. So she's developed that. And it's just interesting, to see children do that. But anyway, but so as we carry this forward into our adult relationships, those connections we make with our friends, family, that's what creates that spirit of cooperation in the relationship. So another key concept, people must be regulated, or, emotionally they can process through their emotions before they can receive new information. So if you're trying to help somebody and they're really upset or way out in left field, don't talk to them. It's not the time to talk. It's time to, okay, let's just have a cup of tea a minute, let's bring the stress down. So, for parents, I always say lecturing children doesn't work in the heat of the moment. If you think you're going to teach them something, forget about it. And the same thing would be in a friendship, an adult friendship, is that, you see your friend going through this terrible thing and in crisis, and, just be soothing and comforting. Don't try to tell them, well, I think that you're reacting this way because of this and that, and let's analyze it, and, it's just not going to work. So just wait for later. So I did see a research study, and this, of course, I've worked with children for a long time, so this is really geared toward children, but there was a study about foster children that showed that, because a lot of people think, when children are removed from bad situations and trauma, just put them in a loving home and they're going to be fine, and this study showed that that's not true. So these children that were a part of this study, there was absolutely no healing over a 2-year period, because the children perceived that their foster family motives were not good. I don't, obviously I don't have the study to give all the details about that. And, whether the motives were right or not, it doesn't matter, because it's what was their perception. They perceived that the foster parents were not doing right things or loving things. And so that created this environment where they stayed stuck in the same behaviors that they had in the abuse, because, and the sense of shame. They never could get past the sense of shame with that. So anyway, so you have to have the environment. Again, it goes in summarizing what we've talked about. The person has to feel safe, that spirit of cooperation, the connection, and the trust, I guess, that the other person, is for them and wants the best for them. So, okay, now there's a little Okay, PACE. This is something that is a healthy pattern. It's just an acronym. There's 4 words. I believe this was developed by Dr. Bruce Perry as well. Playful is the P in PACE. Your relationship, maybe light, kind of like maybe has some humor, fun. You're doing fun things together. It's not all serious. Emotionally rich. You can share your feelings, be transparent. Hopefully that's reciprocated with sharing. Acceptance. You never judge the inner life of the person, your friend or family. Again, I'm saying friend a lot, but this can apply to any intimate relationship, a husband, a wife. You never judge their inner life because you don't know, you've not walked in their shoes, and you don't know, what they've been through on a personal level. So, to me, that's the exciting part of relationships, is getting to know that person, and what do you think about this, and how did you experience this? What's your favorite, whatever, that's just fun to me. It's a journey. So that's part of a healthy relationship, that acceptance. Curiosity, just a deep fascination with the discovery. That's just what I was talking about the inner life. And then empathy, being emotionally engaged with the other person and their experience of the events. Just to really, try to feel what they're feeling, and to walk in those shoes and look out from their eyes, what they think and feel about things. All right, so if I have an example on here, I'm going to kill you. I just put that to remind me and to prompt. Anyway, this is a true story. So this was not my client, but a client of somebody else. But this little girl was adopted by a family, and I worked for an adoption agency for several years, 10 years, I think. But anyway, so this little girl was with her adoptive family, and, for, I don't know, several months. Well, all of a sudden, the mom brings her into counseling. My daughter's saying I'm going to kill you. She had no idea. This little, I think she was like maybe 7 or so. And so this was a pretty strong statement for a little child. So anyway, so as they went through some counseling sessions, what came out is, this is just almost seems too simple to be true, but the little girl with her issues of trauma and abandonment heard the mother say several times to the adoptive dad, you've got to stop going to McDonald's. You're going to have a heart attack and die. And, after several times of hearing that, the girl was traumatized, thinking, I'm going to lose my dad. And so she had formulated this plan in her head that she just was going to kill her parents and herself, and then they would all be in heaven together. And so you just don't know what people, this poor little girl, she just took that so literally. And of course that was her age, that she didn't understand. But I have to say, I had a case that was kind of like that. This little girl, I worked with her like from age 3. She came into the system, and she was adopted by a wonderful adoptive family. And she did fairly well. They realized that she had some high-functioning autism issues, but that she did form an attachment to her parents as much as she could with the autism, and had done fairly well. And her mother called me, I think, when she was about 16 and said, we're really struggling because she had all of a sudden said, I don't want to live here anymore. I'm going to go to, I don't know, it was Colorado or some Midwestern state, and live with my boyfriend that I met online. And so the mother was devastated, like, why would she do this? And so what came out in us having some sessions, thankfully it came out fairly quickly, is that the dad was a teaser. And so he had teasingly said, yeah, when you're 18, we're going to put your stuff on the porch or something, ha ha ha. You know, so I mean, that probably was not appropriate for him to say, but in his mind it was a joke. He would never do something like that. He adored her. And so, but she took that very literally and thought, oh my gosh, I got to find a place to live because they're going to kick me out when I'm 18, you know. And so thankfully we resolved all of that and got through it, and she continues to live with her. She's probably, I don't know, 21 or so now, and she has continued to live with her adopted family, you know. Anyway, so just another example. So you have to understand the perspective of the other person, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Okay, shame. We talked a lot about shame last time, so I'm not going to spend really much time on this. Other than just to say that, of course, shame does, I didn't change that. Shame does activate hiding from people you're attached to. Anyway, again, just use the curiosity and empathy to find out their thoughts and feelings. An example, you know, if a person was feeling shame, you could say something like, I wonder if that feels bad because your dad told you that you were bad. So again, you would have to know the person to understand that that was their issue. But anyway, so basically, if a person is like in shame, feeling bad like about who they are, just avoid any kind of lectures or, you know, telling them this is not true. You know, sometimes that's hard for them to receive. They have to really receive it at a heart level, and so, you know, it's more powerful, I think, just to be there and support and, you know, love them unconditionally. And then shame can also trigger rage. Because, you know, I think deep inside they know. Deep inside they know, I'm, you know, there's something in me that doesn't deserve this. But anyway.
Would you mind backtracking to the match their affect, accept their experience?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and that's part of that pace that we just talked about. You know, so matching their affect. So if they were
mirroring their emotion, is that what that is?
Yeah, right. That, you know, if they're kind of sad and down, you're not like, you know, that you're not really overly zealous or joyful, that you just kind of get on their level. And so you're not not that you have to, you know, feel the way they do, but, you know, that you're kind of emotionally
neutral?
Yeah, neutral. More like if they're, you know, kind of speaking softly, you know, you're not loud, those kind of things. You know, and then just, yeah. Accept their experience. And, you know, again, that goes back to the not judging their inner life. And then just using that curiosity and empathy to find out, well, what are you really thinking and feeling about yourself? Okay, the process. Okay, we're almost to the end here. The process. So, you know, if you have somebody that you're trying to help, try to identify what behavior it is that they're struggling with, that, you know, if you're going to target something to help them with. Or it might be a pattern, you know, like they tend to, I don't know, blame people instead of seeing their own part in it. That's a common pattern. You know, of course there's others too. So, but it's just good to clearly identify, you know, what the behavior or pattern is. Find the meaning using the curiosity and acceptance. So, in other words, you don't want to just speak to the thing itself. You want to help them to discover what's underneath that. You know, you can just ask some simple questions, you know, like, well, when that happens, you know, what does that do for you? Or what do you think? How do you respond to that? You know, and hopefully they would have the insight to say, yeah, you know, I know, I can see that's a pattern in my life, and, you know, I'm wondering that's about, or, hopefully they would want to pursue that. And of course I say all of this with, we want to help people, but they have to want to accept the help. You can't make them take help. But, and this can be different a little bit with, like family members, you're connected to family, whether so that's a little different maybe than friendships. Friendships, people can get mad and decide they don't want to be your friend anymore. So friendships are not as binding maybe as blood relationships, although I've seen families where they just decide, okay, I'm not going to speak to you anymore, goodbye. And that's a choice. People can make that choice. So anyway. All right, so then normalize, understand, and have empathy. And I had a couple examples. So normalize, just, to help them understand they're not alone. A lot of other people have experienced this. You can get through this, to be encouraging to them. Have that empathy. Ask them, use the curiosity so you really understand what they're thinking and feeling. So the two examples that I had here, the doll example, again, with children, I know this happened multiple times, but, the child comes to the adoptive home, they have something from their birth family that means something to them. They still have those feelings and thoughts about the birth family. A lot of times it's a doll or a stuffed animal or something, and the adoptive parent may say, oh, well, that's so ugly and raggedy and they've had it for so long, can't we just get rid of it? No, my goodness, would be the absolute worst thing to do. You need to be understanding that that's a part of their life. That may be the only connection they have to their birth family. And so that's the part where you have to understand the inner world, find out. So, and the second example is a personal one.
I'm sorry, you just triggered a memory.
Oh, okay.
Oh my gosh. I should just share it really fast.
Yeah, go ahead.
So my ex-husband, he had a ratty couch that was flea infested. And I wanted to get rid of it. And I think it was his connection to his family. We had an argument.
Oh, okay.
I'm just remembering that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Had some significance that you didn't realize. Yeah. Okay. But fleas are pretty bad, right?
That's bad.
Right.
I didn't want to flea vomit and keep it.
Right. That thing's going out on the curb, buddy. That's funny. That's a good example. So.
Talking is funny.
Yeah. So that's the next. I was gonna say that's kind of my personal example. When Wayne and I got married, I was brought up in a family that, when you have a problem, you talk about it and you solve it. And his family was. When you have a problem, you don't talk about it because that means you're yelling at each other.
Oh, no.
And so it took us about maybe almost 2 years to figure that out, where I would try to talk about it and he would get more agitated. And finally I thought, wait a minute, this is not making sense. Something's not right here. And so, I finally figured it. I asked him and I found out that yes, in his family of origin, talking meant yelling and fussing and not solving things. And so, his foundation was set that if you're talking, you're going to probably attack me or say something bad about me. And so, anyway, so once we came to terms and understood that about each other, problem solved. I don't think we've had much of a conflict since then, but, because we developed a system to, okay, if we're upset, let's take a few minutes and then talk about it when we're logical and, not emotional. So, anyway.
I figure if it was about your family, you'd talk about it, but if it's about his family, you don't.
Right, yeah, right there. That's a good point.
What about their family combined, though? That's where it gets tricky. They're mutual family.
Right. Yeah. Okay. All right. So this is an amazing scripture that the Lord gave to me, actually on the trip to Scotland. While I was in Scotland, He gave this. So give new meaning to the event. Reframe. It's a powerful tool. So, you know, you can help the person to see things differently and, you know, maybe bring in God's perspective. So Psalm 73:17 in the Passion Translation says, "But then one day I was brought into the sanctuaries of God, and in the light of glory my distorted perspective vanished."
Hallelujah.
That was just amazing to me. So, and really in this psalm, it's a psalm of David, and he's complaining about the wicked. You know, the wicked, oh, look, they prosper, nothing bad happens to them, and here I am struggling, and I'm doing the right thing, and they're not, but they're prospering, and I'm stuck in this cave, you know. What's up with that, Lord? And so, but then, the turning point in the psalm, this is the turning point, is this verse. He said, he came into the sanctuary of God, and in the light of glory, that's real key. I've been learning and studying about the glory and presence of God. And when you come into his glory and presence, it's just amazing, you know. You see things totally different. So he says, my distorted perspective vanished. And so then he goes on to say, in the psalm, you know, I realize the wicked are like the grass. They're going to be burned up and, you know, they'll have nothing. They don't even have God, you know. And so, and then he wasn't so out of sorts. But, you know, the Lord spoke this to me on the trip, and just really showed me that he was going to even fine-tune my perspective on some things, that as I come into his presence and his glory, he was going to show me some things that maybe where my thinking was needed to be his thoughts and not my thoughts. So,
I think the Message translation too. It's
okay.
Right there. It starts with the word until.
Okay. Okay, this is the Message. Until I entered the sanctuary of God, then I saw the whole picture, the slippery road you've put them on with a final crash in the ditch of delusions. In a blink of an eye, disaster. A blind curve in the dark and nightmare. We wake up and rub our eyes. Nothing. There's nothing to them, and there never was. That's perfect. Yeah.
The thing about seeing the whole picture.
Yes. Right.
What version is that?
It's the same verse, but the Message and the Passion are both kind of paraphrases. So it's Psalm 73, verse 17, but this is the Message translation. So it's much more creative, just like, you know, the Passion translation is a little bit more creative too. They say creative license, but it really brings out the theme oftentimes. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so we're coming to the close. I think this next slide is our last slide, and we're going to do a little activity. Okay, the practice. So I just wanted to do some practical things, give you some practical information, you know, of how to do some of this. And so one of the kind of little formulas that a lot of times counselors use is that the I message, you know, I feel this when this happens. And so it's a good way to communicate because it helps you to communicate your feelings without the other person feeling like they're being blamed for something, you know. It's more natural a lot of times to say, you know, well, you didn't take the trash out, and so now, you know, I'm really frustrated and angry. But if you start it with what they did, then they're thinking, that's all they hear probably. You know, oh, I didn't take the trash out, and now she's mad, you know, that kind of thing. But, you know, if you rephrase it, you know, of course, it helps not to scream either. So if you can stay a little more even keel and talk in a regular voice, your inside voice. You know, honey, I just feel really frustrated when, you know, I know you said you'd take the trash out and, you know, it didn't happen, and, you know, what happened, or how can we maybe make a better system, or, you know, just to say some things like that. You know, that's a whole different interaction than, you know, I can't believe you didn't take the trash out, you know. And so that's a simple example. So that's a tool you can use. That's one thing. Reflection or agreement. So you can reflect. Let's say the person is saying something that, they're upset or concerned, maybe not even that emotional, but maybe concerned. So a reflective statement a lot of times helps them to get clarity about what they're thinking, and then you're just really reflecting back what they said. And so
Paraphrase?
a paraphrase, yeah.
Let me make sure I understand you
Yeah.
correctly. This is what you're
Mhm.
saying.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah.
Okay.
And so
It seems like it would be validating to them too. Then they
Yes.
understand they're being heard.
yes. Yeah, I'll never forget the first time I had this experience in my young counseling days. My daughter was like in kindergarten or something, and the teacher called and left some message. I think your daughter's ADHD. You need to get her tested. Blah blah blah. I thought, who would call and leave that on a message? That's just not that appropriate. But I thought, oh, okay, let me call this woman. I went to high school with her, so so I kind of knew her as an acquaintance growing up. But I kind of said to her, that was just kind of, I didn't expect that in a message, and she didn't receive that at all. Well, your daughter, blah 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 blah, and I thought, oh, okay. And so I thought, well, let me talk to somebody else in the school system. And so I talked to somebody else. Well, this test and that, blah 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 blah. And so I thought, boy, this is going nowhere fast, and so finally I got somebody at the next level up, and I had said hello and told her my concern, and so she said to me something to the effect, and I never forgot it, it was so powerful. She said something to the effect of me, so I hear you saying that you're just really concerned about your daughter's school performance and placement. And I said, wow, she heard me. I really felt like she heard me. And so it was powerful, and it made me realize the power of the reflective statement. The person feels heard, and so that I was able to talk to this woman. And so she said, okay, well, how about if we do this? We can do some of these little simple tests, and and we'll just determine from that. I said, sounds wonderful. And so, and of course the long and short of it, she's not ADHD, but she is kind of a deep thinker. But anyway, so problem solved. But it was very validating, and it felt really good to respectful, instead of somebody just blah 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 their opinion again at me and not listening to what I'm saying. So anyway, so take that example for what it's worth. So now agreement really works when somebody's upset, and especially if they're upset at you. And so what you can just do is, yeah, you know what, you're right. I should have done that, and it really diffuses a situation, because then if you're agreeing with them, they have no fight left. There's nothing to fight about. And so, so that can just be kind of a crisis thing, just to help them to calm down. And then, maybe you don't really agree with them, but, if you find something in the thing to say, you know what, I agree, and I see that you're upset, and, let's work on this together to fix it, or, something to that effect. So that can also be a tool that helps and makes the person feel validated. So, okay, so these are kind of all ways to role model healthy communication. Hopefully if people are struggling with communication, maybe because of past events or their childhood or whatever, we can role model that to them, and then hopefully that helps to helps them to maybe shift and change, have other ideas. So, and then just one thought to just, I guess, for all of us, I look at this for myself. If somebody says something negative to me and I feel like I have to prove myself or that somehow it's true, then I start to look at myself and say, why am I believing that when I know it's not true, but there's some kind of an emotional response to it? So there may be an underlying wound there. So just food for thought. It may not be. It may just be that you've had a bad day, and negative words can be hurtful. But something to be aware of, I guess. Why do I have to prove myself? I had a point in my life where I realized, Jesus was silent before his accusers. And, if I'm trusting God to bring justice and make things right, do I really need to say anything and prove myself? And so, I guess I got to a point where I thought, I just need to let things go. And, if it's really an issue, it'll deal with it another way. But you don't always have, there's been times when I wanted to say something so bad because what the person did was wrong and it hurt me. And I just said, Lord, you fix it, you heal it. And I just let it go. And, in hindsight, it was the right thing to do because it helped to move on from, what happened very quickly. If I had said something, it would have stirred things and probably would have been more hurt feelings on my part and theirs, and had kept it stirred up. And so I thought, once I got 3 or 4 weeks down the road, I was thinking, ooh, hallelujah, I'm glad I didn't say anything, this really, thank you, Lord, for taking care of that for me. And, it was great. So anyway. Okay, well, any questions about any of that?
Hey, I just have a comment. The one
Yeah.
about agreement, that is very humbling. When you find something accurate, with your opponent.
Yeah.
You come into agreement for the sake of the relationship. Like, you're not fixating on whatever that issue is. That issue is superficial relative to the importance of the relationship and the other person.
Right.
I just think that's taking the road of humility.
Yeah.
I have to say that one I need to really grow in, because I have this particular need to be correct. And so sometimes I wind up arguing about things that, so what if I'm correct on that point? The fact that I'm arguing about it makes me wrong.
Oh.
You know what I mean? It's like,
Right.
I don't have my priorities straight.
Right.
So,
Right.
just a comment about that one.
Yeah, okay, yeah, gotcha. Yeah, in that process of letting go, saying anything, and, when the Lord tells me to keep my mouth shut, really he told me that that's dying to self.
Ooh.
Sometimes I think, what does it really mean to carry your cross? And he said that's what it means to carry your cross. If you can love your brother or sister and not say anything, and just let me handle it. And so I said, all right, Lord, that's a tough one, but I'll give it a roll. I'll try the best I can. Keep the mouth shut. Anyway. Okay, well, I thought maybe we would, we can practice, maybe do a few examples, just what to say maybe in certain situations. I did kind of create just a couple of examples to talk about, but what I want to do is I've got some sheets here. Just, think about if there was a time that, basically it's just four statements on a sheet, and I was hoping to just take about 10 minutes. Oh, I forgot to say one more thing. The Lord told me to say, to talk just briefly about whole tones. Have y'all ever heard of whole tones or know what whole tone? Okay. All right. I'm going to just read this little testimony thing here. There's a gentleman named Michael Terrell, and he had this amazing discovery, and this is using music as a healing tool, I guess is the best way to say it. That's his picture. I know you can't probably see it very well, but he's on it's wholetones.com. But let me just, I heard the Lord say whole tones, and I've listened to some of the whole tones music, and it's been very nice. But I heard him say whole tones, and I thought, okay, well, I guess I'll just, I hadn't been thinking about that, but it came up when I was praying about it. So let me just read you his testimony about how this came to be. So, let me see. He says, first I have a rather unusual story to quickly share so you understand the power of this project and how it came to life. This divine gift I'm sharing with you today was given to me while I was in Jerusalem by a mysterious but wonderful Christian piano player named David, of course, who was performing Christian songs of worship in a Jewish Orthodox coffee house. Yeah, right. He noticed that I was aware of what he was doing. He smiled at me. He knew I was a believer. On a break, he ran to his car, came back, and sat down next to me. What happened next changed my life forever. See, David's life's work was studying the ancient Psalms of King David in ancient Hebraic forms of music, and he handed me manuscript copies of many of these psalms. Then he said, these are for you. Yeshua said you would know what to do with them. Well, let me tell you, both of us wept. Sometime later, I looked at one of the manuscripts and noticed something mysterious. David had adapted them to a modern key. Sonically, this simply didn't work. So I reflected on our conversation that night in Jerusalem. Yeshua said you would know what to do with them. Suddenly, the light came on. I did know what to do. I noticed the original manuscript was in a different key. Supposedly, King David tuned his instruments higher than what we know as the modern musical tuning system. I decided to experiment. I found reference to King David on my Bible on page 222. Now, I don't know if this was divine intervention or not, but something told me to double that page number and retune my guitar. That's when I realized I think I just discovered the key of David. So I quickly grabbed my guitar and tuned it up to 444 hertz. A hertz measures sound as one vibrational cycle per second. These are frequencies. All this means is that each sound vibrates 444 times per second. Once I retuned, I discovered that most of the ancient healing frequencies were right now under my fingers. I'm convinced that God has given these frequencies to King David, and I know as a fact that my piano playing friend David gave them to me. So this is something, and it's endorsed by like Rick Pino and that Brian Welsh that got saved. It was in a Todd White video. He got saved out of that rock group Korn, became a Christian, and so he's listened to it and endorses it. He's got other things, and there's people that I guess have used that. But anyway, so he's given a little sample that I thought maybe I would play while y'all are
awesome.
thinking and looking at these. So let me finish explaining about this.